chapter 14, the last chapter in the book of Zechariah. A lot of things in this book are concerned the future. And it's amazing that somebody that wrote 2,500 years ago, the things still haven't come to pass, but yet people are studying them. And some of the things that have happened in between are very singular, as far as nothing like it has happened. It's close to what the Bible talks about in some ways, such as the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 A.D., and you would think, well, that could be the end of the matter. I mean, where the Jews were scattered all over the world. They were scattered all over also when Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Jerusalem 350 years before. So, or maybe it was more than that. No, it must have been 500 years before. So then Jerusalem, all the Jews were scattered, but then in 1948, in our lifetime, my lifetime, the Jews have returned to Israel, rebuilt Jerusalem, but it doesn't seem like it's a godly type of a country. It's more of a people that have come through a hard time of being persecuted throughout the world by different peoples, and the Nazis mainly, Second World War, and coming back to Israel, and then the Muslims coming against them in Baghdad and Iraq and certain other places, and the Jews returning, and then in Russia, Soviet Union actually, and they came back from the Soviet Union. And what it talks about in the Bible as far as these people returning, it's in the book of Ezekiel, the 38th, 39th chapter, a lot of things. And then, of course, the return of the people it is at the end of the matter. No, it just keeps on going and going. So it's just so amazing as we're given this information by this man, Zechariah, who lost his life to those very Jews that he was trying to tell about what's going to happen from the Lord. And it begins, "Behold, days of the Lord come, and your spoils shall be divided among you." Well, and I will assemble all the nations against Jerusalem for battle, and the city shall be captured, and the houses and shall be plundered, and the women shall be tainted, and shall come forth. So this is a situation that Jerusalem is going to be captured. Well, as we mentioned, it was captured by Nebuchadnezzar, which was before this. Then it was rebuilt by this people here, and then it was retaken by Rome, and Rome sent the people around, and then it was rebuilt, came back in 48, but then we know in Revelation that it's going to be plundered again, because there's a lot of the things in the book of Revelation with the beast, and then it will be the beast will be stopped by the Lord, and then the 1,000-year reign will occur. But then after the 1,000-year reign, it says Gog and Magog will come back, and Satan will come back and surround the tents and the holy city. And you can read that all in Revelation. So which is this one is he talking about? Now, as far as right here, if we look at the writings of Josephus, who lived during the Roman occupation and the destruction of Jerusalem. After Jerusalem was completely destroyed, I'll have to read the book out of the book here, and what Josephus said, and it begins, "Some of them have been broken." And this is the people left after the Romans ravaged Jerusalem. God went into it. "Some of them have been broken on the rack or tortured to death by fire and scourge. Others have been half-eaten by wild beasts and then kept alive to provide them as food for a second time in order to afford merriment and sport to their enemies. And those who are still alive must be reckoned as the most miserable, for they have often prayed for a death that does not come. And where is the mighty city, the mother city of the whole Jewish race, entrenched behind so many lines of ramparts, sheltered behind so many forts and lofty towers that could hardly contain upon the provisions of war, and defended by thousands upon thousands of determined men? What has become of the city that was believed to have God as her founder? Uprooted from her base, she has been wiped out, and all that remains of her is the camp of those who destroyed her, occupying her ruins. Wretched old men sit dejected beside the ashes of the sanctuary, and a few women have been reserved by the enemy for the basest outrage. And it goes on, and terrible things that have happened to the people in Jerusalem by the Romans could be what it's talking about here, but I think it goes further in the future than that. And shall come forth half of the city into captivity, and the rest of my people, in no way shall they be utterly destroyed from out of the city. So, and the Lord shall come forth and shall deploy against those nations as the day of his battle array in the day of war. So it's nations. Now, this could be from the 38th and 39th chapter of Ezekiel, where it talks about this. Very well could be. And it could be the time of Revelation 20, as we've mentioned before, when Satan comes back. And then in 4, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives. Now, who is he? Well, the Lord shall come forth, and he would be, that would be referring to him. Of 2 would be to the male here. The Lord is the only person. After that is the nations and the battle array of the war. So his refers to the Lord. So the Lord his feet are standing. So this shows you that Jesus is God, Yahweh, Jehovah, in human form, because his feet shall stand in that day. And this is in Zechariah. It's not in the New Testament. And upon the Mount of Olives, where Jesus was so often found. So, and the one over against Jerusalem, according to the east, that is the Mount of Olives, where Jesus went with his disciples. And the Mount of Olives shall split, half of it towards the east and west, an exceedingly great chaos. And there's a word chaos, so you could add that to your English derivatives book, 5478.1, chaos. An exceedingly great chaos, and half of the mountain shall lean towards the north, and half of it towards the south. So Jerusalem is going to have this split. There's something, a quake or whatever, however it does it, and things will be changed. And we get into the 47th chapter of Ezekiel. We'll get into this where the water comes out of the holy place, and you can read it. We'll get to that a little bit here later. And the valley of my mountains shall be obstructed, and the ravine shall be joined together by mountains unto Azal. And Azal was some site that was east of Jerusalem. I'm not really sure. You can look up Wikipedia, has a little article on Azal. And it shall be obstructed in which manner it was obstructed in front of the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. This was previous to this period of time. So there's going to be a change of the structure of Jerusalem. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the holy ones with him. The holy ones with him, you can read all about that in our book, English Entities of the Book of Revelation. Talks about the holy ones, especially in the New Testament. So many places. So hopefully that we'll be with the Lord when he comes at this time with the holy ones, and we'll be the holy ones. And it will be in that day, so this is a day, there shall not be light, phos. So there's going to be something happening. Now, is this, again, is this Revelation 20 before the after the 1,000-year reign, when Satan is released and the Lord comes back. I'm not sure. This isn't anybody that's definitive on this. They're taking a big chance because it may not be. So I'm not definitive, but I'm giving you the best ideas that it could possibly be that I can see. So it will be in that day there shall not be light, but chilliness and ice. So that could be right after the beast, during that time possibly. It shall be one day, and that day shall be known to the Lord. And neither day nor night, and towards evening it shall be light. There's neither a day nor night, but then towards evening the light will appear. Now, is that when Jesus returns, when the New Jerusalem of some sort? It's a good possibility. I'll show you where I believe that, and here in a little bit it'll say. And it shall be in that day shall come forth living water from out of Jerusalem. And we mentions that living water in both Ezekiel 47 and Revelation, the 19th or 20th chapter, and the 21st chapter is in the New Jerusalem. And half of it into the foremost sea, and half of it into the latter sea. The foremost sea, what I would think would be the Mediterranean. The latter sea, in Ezekiel mentions it going to the Dead Sea and bringing life to the Dead Sea, where there's fishing there. But that wouldn't be probably it could be during the 1,000-year reign. And in summer and in spring, thus it will be. So this change of the Jerusalem and the water mentions coming out in Ezekiel 47 coming out. And as Ezekiel went down, the water kept getting deeper and deeper till finally it was a rushing stream and he couldn't cross it. And the Lord will be for king over all the earth. Sounds like this is towards the end then, doesn't it? Because the king's he's going to be over all the earth. It doesn't seem like that would have been the place. Could have been the 1,000-year reign where Jesus reigns, but then Satan is released and the people come against Jerusalem, but this seems like it's more final than that. Maybe, maybe not. And in that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. Either after the 1,000-year reign or before New Jerusalem. Now here's why I see it. Since in that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. What? Kiklon, cycle. We get the word kiklo, cycle, encircling all the earth. Well, that's interesting. Now you think, well, the name is just being passed around. Well, encircling all the earth, to me it sounds like that's could possibly mean New Jerusalem there, because it's in the sky and it moves around at God's will, apparently. And unto the wilderness, but it mentions that the New Jerusalem, but outside of the dogs and the sinners, different things, and the new earth, but yet apparently there's still going to be life and people outside of the New Jerusalem. And so is there still going to be another Jerusalem, the old Jerusalem on that earth? I don't know. But anyway, there shall be one Lord, and his name one, encircling all the earth. And unto the wilderness, from Geba unto Rimmon. And Geba was north of Jerusalem, Rimmon was south. And Ramah shall remain in its place. From the gate of Benjamin unto the place of the first gate. And the gate of Benjamin is mentioned in different places in the Old Testament. It says in Jeremiah 20.2, and he struck him and put him in, that's Jeremiah, the dungeon which was by the gate of the house of Benjamin, the upper, which was in the house of the Lord. That's Jeremiah 22. And he, Jeremiah, was himself in the gate of Benjamin, and that's where he was seized in Jeremiah 37:13. Then in Jeremiah 38:7 it says, and the king was sitting down at the gate of Benjamin. And then in Ezekiel 48:32, the New Jerusalem that's the 1,000-year reign, I think. And the ones towards the east, 4,500. And 3 gates, the gate of Joseph 1, the gate of Benjamin 1, and it goes on. That's Ezekiel 48:32. So even in this 1,000-year reign temple, there's going to be a gate of Benjamin. And then in Revelation 21:10-12, it says, "And he showed to me the great city, holy Jerusalem, coming down from out of heaven from God, having a great wall, a wall great and high, and having 12 gatehouses. And upon the gatehouses were 12 angels, and names being inscribed, which is of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel, of which Benjamin was." So this could be any one of these places that it's talking about here. The gate of Benjamin even appears in the New Jerusalem. And then, and unto the gate of the corners, and unto the tower of Hananiel, unto the wine vats of the king. The gates of the corners is in the northwest corner of Jerusalem. It mentions about it in 2 Kings 14:13 and 2 Chronicles 25:23, where Joash, the king of Israel, came when he was attacking Israel, and he tore down some of the wall in this area. The Tower of Hananiel is mentioned. If we go to the Old Testament, 31:38 of Jeremiah, it says, "Behold, days come, says the Lord, and a city shall be built to the Lord." It doesn't say Jerusalem, it doesn't say where. "From the Tower of Hananiel unto the gate of the corner." So now here we get the same thing as Zechariah saying. "And its measurement shall go forth before it unto the hills of Gareb, and shall be surrounded round about from choice stones." So apparently that's going to be a walled area. And that's what New Jerusalem is. It's choice stones. And all the valley Fagarim and ashes, and all Asaramoth unto the rushing stream Kidron, which is in Jerusalem, unto the corner gate of the horses, eastward, shall be a sanctuary to the Lord. And no longer shall it be plucked up, and in no way shall it be demolished into the eon. So there's going to be a place in the Jerusalem, a sanctuary to the Lord. So is this in the New Jerusalem? I just think it's very interesting that it mentions this in Jeremiah also. The Tower of Hananiel unto the wine vats of the king. "And they shall dwell in it, and it will not be anathema any longer, and Jerusalem shall dwell securely." Again, it's anathema. Is it anathema today? If the beast takes over, then I would say it is. It's a cursed city. It will be destroyed to a certain point by the beast, and then rebuilt and become the city of the great king. Jesus, the prince, will reign in the 1,000 years. And then it continues, "And this will be the downfall in which the Lord shall smite all the peoples." Now, this part here could be any place he's doing all these things, but it's very similar to what we see in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And in Revelation 20. "And this will be the downfall in which the Lord shall smite all the peoples, as many as marched against Jerusalem," which they do. It mentions they surround Jerusalem in the Revelation 20. "Their flesh shall melt away." Now it could also be the time after the beast, when they marched against Jerusalem, and they're in Ezekiel 38 and 39. It could also be today, where this happens if these nations march against Jerusalem, but it sounds like this would have been a later time than what's happening today, as far as Jerusalem could be attacked by all these nations. But it wasn't all the nations of the earth, just certain ones in Ezekiel 38. "And their flesh shall melt away while standing upon their feet." Podon, pod, a pod, comes from that. "And their ophthalmi, eyes, ophthalmologist, as a derivative, shall flow from out of their sockets," basically openings. and their tongue shall melt away in their mouth. This is all while they're standing. So some type of a destruction of mankind, of flesh. How it happens, don't know. And there will be in that day a great astonishment from the Lord upon them. And they shall take hold each the hand of his neighbor, and shall closely join his hand to the hand of his neighbor. And Judah shall deploy in Jerusalem, and shall bring together the strength of all the people round about, gold and silver and clothes, into abundance exceedingly. Now this sounds like the 38th, 39th chapter, because they go out and they bury the dead, and then they take all this, they burn the fuel from I think it lasts 7 years, as they burn the fuel from the army that's left. And this will be the downfall of the horses and the mules and the camels and the donkeys, and of all the cattle being in those camps, and basically the destruction of the enemy's property. That was according to this downfall. And it will be as many as should be left from out of all the nations coming against Jerusalem, that they shall ascend by year to do obeisance to the king. So this has not happened yet. So Zechariah is really prophesying in the future. Well, they're going to be doing obeisance, which is being put your face to the ground, to a higher authority, the king. King James change this into worship, and people today think that's worship. They got it into playing guitars and singing, but it's not the same thing. It's getting down to the ground, doing obeisance to a higher authority, to the Lord Almighty, the King, the Lord Pantocratori, the Almighty, and to solemnize the holiday of the pitching of tents. And it does mention the tents in Revelation 20. So is that what he's talking about here? And it will be as many as should not ascend from out of all the tribes of the earth unto Jerusalem to do obeisance to the King, to the Lord Almighty, and these things shall be added to those. So apparently there are good people there. They could still be on earth as it's redone. God is in New Jerusalem. He comes down. I'm not sure. And there shall not be rain upon them if you don't come. And if the tribe of Egypt should not ascend, nor come, then upon these will be the downfall which the Lord struck all the nations, as many as should not ascend to solemnize the holiday of the pitching of tents, Succoth. That's what it's called. This will be the sin of Egypt, and the sin of all the nations, whichever should not ascend to solemnize the holiday of the pitching of tents. In that day there will be upon the bridle of the horse, holy to the Lord Almighty. And the horse is one Jesus is sitting upon, I believe. And the kettles in the house of the Lord will be as bowls before the face of the altar. That is, the common kettles will be as the holy bowls that were by the altar. So the whole thing shows the holiness of this city of the Jerusalem. Now, if this is the New Jerusalem or the Jerusalem of the 1,000 years, that's a good question. And it will be every kettle in Jerusalem and in Judah holy to the Lord Almighty. It's set aside to the Lord. And all the ones sacrificing shall come and shall take from out of them and shall cook with them. And there will not be any longer the Canaanite in the house of the Lord of the forces in that day. The Canaanite are basically unbelievers. The Canaanites were long gone by this time that he was writing. So the Canaanite were basically people that didn't believe in the God, in Yahweh, in Jehovah. And same with Jesus in that day. So Zechariah has all these things to say, a lot to go over with more than once. And ending with this chapter ends I've went through all the minor prophets, which they're called, from Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. I haven't done the three major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentation. It's very important, I think, to go through them because the time is coming closer to me that what's happening here in the Bible is going to be very important to know. So the next chapter I'm going to be going, rather than jumping right into Isaiah, I'm going to go through 2 Chronicles so we can see the condition of Israel and what led to its downfall, to the being taken captive, the people, and Jerusalem being destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. That'll all be in the 2nd chapter of Chronicles, which is mainly on the kings of Judah. The kings of Israel was way before. They are important, but we will then, after we go through the major prophets, then we'll go back and start with Exodus, because I already did Genesis years ago. These are all being spread out over years, sorry. And anyway, we'll be doing 2 Chronicles next, and I hope you'll join us in the book of 2 Chronicles, and God bless.